He made a name for himself playing characters in 80s classics like Blaine in Pretty in Pink, Molly Ringwald's love interest, or maybe you know him from St. Elmo's Fire or Mannequin. Now the talented Andrew McCarthy has written his very first novel. It's called Just Fly Away, and he joins us this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here, thanks.
Tell us about the book.
Yeah, it's a book about a 15-year-old girl, young adult novel, about a 15-year-old girl who discovers she has a 8-year-old brother living across town that she never knew about.
Yikes.
Yeah, so it's sort of the old secret child thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's a book about family secrets and then discovering sort of what to do about it and how it turns her world upside down.
What inspired you to write this book? You are a travel writer, but why go
I'm a travel writer in my other life.
Yeah, you have about 10 other lives, by the way. You're a busy guy.
I can't hold down a job. And anyway, I just had this idea about, I was interested in writing a story about marriage and secrecy and how secrecy corrodes and puts up walls between us. And eventually, my favorite character in it was the 15-year-old daughter, so I started writing from her point of view. And I was just interested in how her world is spun upside down. You know, when we're teenagers, we feel very isolated and alone in the world.
Sure.
I know I did anyway. And this idea that there's another kid out there that I never knew about just further alienates and changes your place in the world. So I was interested in that, and it just sort of became this book.
What made you go into the young adult fiction genre?
Well, there's something about it that I really like, the emotional kind of urgency and immediacy about it. There's no kind of cool remove. It's just very full on. It's like, you did this to me, you've ruined my life. And you know, and it's just very, but the interesting thing I found out was that the majority of YA readers are adults. You know, it's interesting, but there's something I think about the emotional immediacy of it. And there's a certain remove when we're reading these books as adults. They allow us a certain distance from our emotions, whereas when we're kids, we're just full on right in the middle of it.
Right.
And looking back, I think people kind of go, oh, yeah, that was a big moment in my life.
Was it hard for you to write it from a teenage girl's perspective?
You know, that's the sort of scary thing. It was the easiest part. I think my inner muse is a 15-year-old girl, and who knew?
And really, there's something about those teen years that inspires some great stories in film and in books.
Well, I love I think coming of age stories are fantastic. I mean, I think we're always coming of age in certain ways. And I think at that moment, though, everything is, it's like those movies that I did back in the 80s you were mentioning.
Yeah.
I mean, those are really sort of young adult cinema in a way. They took young people's problems seriously and gave them a respect that they perhaps hadn't had before. And I think those are moments in our life that we look back on when we're past them as like, those are the moments when I sort of burst into my emotional life and took space in the world. And it changes us.
What inspired you to make that transition from film into writing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's all been, there's no plan at work here. It's all just one accident after the next. I became a travel writer, and that sort of led into just me writing a lot, and then I had this idea for a book, and it led eventually to this, you know. And I also direct a lot of television and things, so they all kind of feed each other and bounce off each other.
So full disclosure here, I have to be honest with you. I had never seen any of the movies that you're in, but I don't.
You're too young.
No, I'm not. I'm bad with movies, but I did my research. I watched Pretty in Pink yesterday.
Oh dear, okay.
It was a great movie. I didn't fall asleep, which is big for me.
Oh, that is high praise, indeed.
That is good, but first of all, you kind of invented cyber stalking. When that picture of you comes up on the computer, I was like, oh my gosh, this is creepy.
Put it on me.
Yeah. But like, can we talk about your hair? Because I heard that you wear a wig.
No, at the end of that movie, we had to reshoot the end because at the original, and no spoiler alert here because it's 30 years later, I think everybody who's seen it has seen it already if they're going to see it, except you. And anyway, we had to reshoot the end, and I was doing another project, and I had a shaved head, and so they put a wig on me, a very bad wig. And so I just do some bad wig acting. I think if they knew that we were going to still be talking about that movie 30 years later, they would have paid for a better wig. But
did you have any idea that was going to have such an impact on future generations?
At the time, I mean, you know, I guess it's the same thing with this young adult whole genre. It captures something for a generation of people of coming of age that's really powerful. But I mean, those are wonderful, sort of open-hearted movies, but they're not Gone with the Wind, you know?
I don't know. I haven't seen that either.
But really?
Yeah, I know it's bad.
It really is bad. What have you? Anyway, so what were we talking about?
We're talking about you. Let's talk. What are some standout moments of your career? You've done so much.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a very nostalgic person, so I don't really look back a lot. I do a lot of directing now. I direct shows like The Blacklist or Orange is the New Black, which I like a lot. I like But you know, in those movies, I suppose I like St. Elmo's Fire a lot. Although I like Weekend at Bernie's, I'm quite fond of Bernie. You've never heard that's a movie
No,
about
but
a guy who
I know
drags
the
a dead.
dance.
Yeah.
I know
Oh,
the
you-
dance. The like, you know, this thing. Right? Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Let's talk about your directing. You recently directed with Pretty in Pink co-star James Spader
Yeah, I
on
work a lot
Blacklist.
with
How's
James.
that?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, James is very much himself, and he's great. But someone saw us when we on the first day when I was doing one of the shows. They saw us laughing, and they said, "So what are you and James? Is it different than back in the day?" And James, being James, looked at him the way only he can and said, "We're exactly the same, only more so."
You're like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
what
sure."
he said. Yeah. So, but he's great. Yeah.
And Orange is the New Black. I have seen that show. Love that show. What's it like working on that?
That's like herding cats.
Oh.
I mean, it's great fun. I mean, you know, I have every actor neuroses there is, so I understand all the crazy things that actors are going through, and it's just learning a way to sort of pass it. Actors are kind of like kids, let's face it. You just sort of go, here's the playpen, bounce around in there, but here are the walls. And when you get in trouble, I'm over here.
I love it.
You know, and but that show's a lot of fun. It's very well written.
Speaking of kids, you have 3 kids.
I do. It feels like 30. Yeah.
In a good way, though, right?
In the best way. No, as a friend of mine said, kids ruin your life in a wonderful way.
What do you hope young adults, anyone who reads this book, takes away from it?
Oh, you just, I think, want people to start nodding their head and kind of go feeling a little less alone in a certain way, you know? And just to get, yeah, that's how I feel. That's me. I get that.
I love that. Andrew McCarthy, thank you so much for being here. Such a pleasure to meet you.
You too. Thanks.
All right, well, you can see Andrew tonight at 7 p.m. at the Mid-Continent Public Library in Kansas City for the Rainy Day Books